Hi, it's Andy XL back with another NFXL production. Time to look back at week 9 with good week, bad week. So we're half of the regular season is in the books now, but what was written, good or bad, for the 32 NFL teams in week 9? Let's start with the good week, guys. The Buffalo Bills. They got a hugely significant win on the back of a really good performance against the Panthers in week 8, making it a great 2 weeks for the Bills. They are now putting real pressure on the Pats in the AFC East and within touching distance of the top seed in the AFC. Big news for the Bills is how much better they have been against the run in the last 2 games. We know how good they are on offense, but if the D begins to play well, everybody will have to be aware of this Bills team. Now they need to make it 3 in a row at Miami in week 10, but the Bills, a very good week for them and a very good fortnight. Another couple of teams that had a good week, even though they were on bye, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. With the Lions and Packers losing, both the Eagles and Bucks move up the conference standings and saw their chances of getting the top seed in the NFC improve as a result. Losses for all three of Philadelphia's division rivals made the bye week about as good as it could be for them, whilst the Falcons' loss also helps the Bucks in terms of winning their division. So what a great bye week for those two. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they had a really good week after being the source of much criticism in recent weeks. The highly paid Steelers D came to play in week 8 as their D line absolutely dominated the Colts' previously excellent O line. They were okay offensively, but the credit for this one has to go to the D that forced Daniel Jones into throwing 3 picks, sacked him 5 times, and limited Jonathan Taylor to just 57 scrimmage yards. If the Steelers are to win their division and make some sort of challenge in the postseason, this game has to be their template for success. Dominant D and efficient offense is their path to glory. The D now need to show they can do it again at the Chargers in week 10 before a chance to eliminate the Bengals as competition in the AFC North in week 11. Um, right, it was a really good week for Los Angeles Rams. The Rams offense of Matthew Stafford are in top form right now, and they've moved up the NFC standings as well. So a really good week for them, an emphatic victory, and they look in really great form now. A team to watch, that's for sure. And it was a good week also for the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC. This was a win that Sam Darnold can take huge credit for, as he was really good in this game. But his best wide receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba, continues to play like an MVP candidate as he registered his 600-yard plus game of the season. He is the most consistently excellent offensive player of the season so far. Maybe with Jonathan Taylor thrown in and Christian McCaffrey, but they're all up there. But he's the only wide receiver, standout wide receiver, and what a breakout season it is for him to establish himself in the upper echelons of wide receivers in the NFL. And if he and Darnold continue their good work, the postseason is well within the reach of the Seahawks following this win, and maybe even a very high seeding in the NFC. But they still face tough challenges from the Rams and 49ers within their own division. The next 2 weeks are big in the NFC West title race as the 49ers meet the Rams in week 10, while the Seahawks need to beat the Cardinals before they get the Rams in week 11. If the Rams or Seahawks win their next two, they will take control of this division. The Carolina Panthers had a good week as well. Sorry, I'm still battling cold and cough, but I'm just going to keep going. The Carolina Panthers had a good week. In a week of fine wins, the Panthers' win is up there as one of the best. A real tour de force of bend don't break defense and another strong showing on the ground defensively were enough to take care of Green Bay at Lambeau. It is a win that lifts them to second in the NFC South, but still a game and a half back of the Bucks. But they are just half a game back in the NFC wildcard race after this win. If they can take care of the Saints in week 10, they will then have a shot to get to 7-4 with a week 11 win in Atlanta and keep improving their divisional and wildcard chances. They may need to win both though, as the sledding gets tougher after those games. Um, it was a good week too for the New England Patriots. Another one, the Patriots win was not one of quality, but any win when you are leading your division is a good win. And this one puts the Patriots joint top of the AFC standings and likely just 3 wins away from making the postseason. Once again, their own line was their weakness in this game, though, and that could be an issue come the postseason. But the fact that is likely to happen, come to pass, probably in the postseason, still mean the Pats make the postseason, which shows how fast this team is progressing. A tough road game at Tampa may not be their best shot at getting one of those 3 wins they need, but then they face the Jets, Bengals, and Giants, so could even get the 10th win they need by the end of week 13. Uh, so really good week for them. A good week again for the Denver Broncos. On paper, this looks like another Broncos-inspired fourth quarter win, but the truth is not as flattering as that. But the mere fact they won makes it a good week for them. I keep putting caveats on the Broncos. I'm not going to apologise for it. I have doubts. The Broncos offense once again sputtered through 3 quarters with just one big play TD to their name, whilst the defense held a red zone inept opposing offense to field goals. Then the Broncos did enough via another big play to overhaul that opponent that had lost its starting quarterback to concussion. I wonder would they even have had the chance to get that late win if CJ Stroud had not left this game. In other words, this offense is not consistent enough to go deep into the postseason, and this team is probably not as good as its record. But this win keeps them top of their division and tied for top spot in the AFC, so it has to be a good week for them. As it was for the San Francisco 49ers, Mac Jones was at quarterback once again. He played well and efficiently in leading the 49ers to a win that allows them to stay on the heels of the Rams and Seahawks in the NFC East, and also in the stay in the wildcard spots in the NFC. Next week sees a huge game for the 49ers as they host the Rams. They would love to have the likes of Ricky Pearsall and Brandon Aiyuk back for that game, regardless of whether Mac Jones continues at quarterback or Brock Purdy returns. A win there and they could still win the division. Lose it and they that may well be out of their reach. The 4 games after that may present better opportunities for the 49ers to get the wins they need to ensure postseason football though. And it was another good week on the comeback trail for the Baltimore Ravens. 4 touchdowns for the returning Lamar Jackson and another strong defensive performance keep the Ravens' comeback express on track. The Steelers have restoked their engine though, so the Baltimore Express needs to keep rolling against the Vikings in week 10 before they hit a seemingly downhill section of track, schedule-wise against the Browns and Jets. After that come 3 in-division games, including the first meeting with the Steelers. Will that be when they or the Steelers get derailed? Well, a lot of track to cover before we get to that, but just to put it out there. A good week too for the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings win in Detroit was as important as it was emphatic, as the Vikings D-line dominated the Lions O-line, shutting down the run game and knocking Jared Goff off his stride, both figuratively and literally. They remain bottom of the NFC North, but after this week's amazing set of results, that division is now anybody's to win. And in a similarly tight wildcard race, they are now just 1 win out of a postseason qualification spot. They now have 2 home games against the Ravens and Bears, which have the look of pivotal games for all involved. If the Vikings win both, they could go to Lambeau to play the Packers in week 12, full of renewed hope and ambition. So a good week for them, but they need to follow it up. And it was a good week too for the Chicago Bears. In what was a wild week all round in the NFC North, it was certainly a wild ride to a win for the Bears, with Ben Johnson going about as deep into his bag of tricks playbook as he is ever likely to go. Then they built a nice lead only to give it up late and then find a way to get a recovery late winning touchdown. It has to be said they got a lot of help from a generous Bengals D, and whilst this win puts them right in the middle of a tight divisional contest, they will not be likely to come up against such generous opposition going forward. They host the Giants next before a game at the Vikings that suddenly seems a lot more important to both teams after week 9. They need to win at least one of these next 2 to build on the 5 wins they've got from the last 6. If they got 7 wins from what does that make it? 7 wins from the 6 wins from 8. That would be a really good return. I think we'll figure out the sum eventually. Good week too for the Los Angeles Chargers, but a bit of a good week, bad week scenario for them. They started badly, conceding the kickoff return for a touchdown on special teams, then Justin Herbert throwing a pick 6. Herbert led them back to a win, but the bad news were more O-line injuries for Bobby Hart and most notably Joe Alt, who's out for the season, and that could be a big problem for the Chargers going forward. They have the Steelers next, and look what that D just did to the strong Colts O-line. So the Chargers need to find a way to cover those injuries if they are to keep the pressure on the Broncos in the AFC West. This next section of games is going to be really big for the Chargers in terms of how that O-line pans out. Could they even make a trade move? It's got to be a possibility. Good week for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Got away with an indifferent performance against the Raiders to get a win that narrows the gap to the Colts in the AFC South to 1.5 games and keeps the Jags in a wild card spot. So good week due to the win, but they will need to be better than this to challenge the Colts and hold off the likes of the Chiefs and Ravens in the AFC wildcard race. And finally, in the last game of the week, it was a good week for the Arizona Cardinals. They came off their bye week, needing to go 8-2 post the bye to make the postseason. Well, now they need to go 7-2 after an easy win in Dallas. Quarterback controversy? You bet there is. Jacoby Brissett was excellent in this game. Yeah, he missed a late throw against Marvin Harrison, but generally he was excellent. And has thrown for 6 touchdowns, the same as Murray, but has thrown just 1 pick compared to Murray's 3. And he's also played in fewer games. He has a higher passer rating, and the Cardinals' offense just looked better with him at the helm. Still a long road ahead to the postseason, but this was a big first step, and now they've got a big call to make at quarterback. So they were the good week teams. Let's move on to bad week. The Houston Texans. The inability to score touchdowns has limited the Texans all season, and that became the unbearable truth of them in their week 9 loss to the Broncos. And it was no easier to bear once CJ Stroud left this game concussed. And in losing, they missed an opportunity to gain ground on the Colts, but more relevantly, lost valuable ground in the AFC wildcard race. They are another team now that 7-2 from here looks a minimum requirement if the Texans are to make the postseason now. So wins against Jacksonville and Tennessee in the next 2 weeks look a must before 3 tough opponents after that. But they could be all over for them before they even get to that stretch unless they win these 2. The Dallas Cowboys got their ass kicked by the Cardinals in week 9 and are only just ahead of them in the NFC and falling adrift in the wildcard race. 6-2 from here looks to be at least what they will need to make the postseason. On average, they are conceding over 30 points a game this season, by far the most in the NFC, and only the Bengals have given up more in the entire NFL. Good as it has been, that is too heavy a load for this offense to carry. Week 10 of the Raiders is now a must-have for the Cowboys. Then they host the Eagles, then the Chiefs. On current form, the Cowboys' season's hopes could be over by the end of Week 13. Kansas City Chiefs, bad week for them. When you're on the road against a good team, you need to be better than decent, and the Chiefs were not on either offense or defense in this game. It was not a bad performance, but it is a loss that cost them in the standings, and now makes making the postseason their focus rather than winning divisional titles and getting high seedings. Just getting to the party is where they want to be now. If they could pull off a win at Denver in Week 10, those objectives could change though, as that might change the picture, particularly if the Chargers lost as well. So a big week coming up in the AFC West. Washington Commanders. Well, when it rains, it pours. The torrential flood of Seahawks points made this a bad week for the Commanders. But serious injuries to Jaden Daniels, Marshawn Lattimore, and Luke McCaffrey have seen the storm clouds descend on Washington and could see their drowning season hopes being washed away in the coming weeks. Enough of that analogy. The Lions may be the next. I said enough. There I come again. The Lions may be the next wave to hit Washington in Week 10, but they look in trouble now. Washington, Cincinnati Bengals. For the second week in a row, the Bengals defense could do nothing to support a strong offensive showing, and this loss to the Bears drops them behind the Ravens, who now look like the only real challenger to the Steelers in the AFC North. They are also 2.5 games out of the AFC North lead and also in the AFC wildcard race. And with a defense like theirs, they surely have little or no chance of making the postseason now. Similarly, it was a bad week for the Atlanta Falcons. It certainly was not a bad performance by the Falcons, though, as they lost narrowly to the Pats in Week 9, and missed extra point proved to be their undoing in a 1-point loss. But Michael Penix was not as good as they needed him to be either, and that's a bit of a story of the season as well. The Falcons' pass rush looked good again, but that was not enough for them to get a win they badly needed. They cannot afford losses from where they are in the standings, and when they have an opportunity to win like this, they have to take it. They are another team needing to go 7-2 from here, and they may have it all on to get one of those 7 on the road against the Colts team looking to rebound in week 10. It was a bad week for the Green Bay Packers. They were flat out bad in their home loss to the Panthers, and Jordan Love was worse than bad. Yes, they had plenty of offensive yardage, but were unable to take their opportunities. And Brandon McManus struggles on it as a kicker uh, was another factor in this too. The Packers are built to be fundamentally sound rather than spectacular, with the exception of their pass rush now Micah Parsons is there. And there will be weeks where their workmanlike nature prevents them from getting wins against teams with more talent top end wise, that teams with more top end talent would take, particularly on the offensive side. And in that regard, they badly missed Tucker Kraft, and they're going to miss him for the rest of the season with a torn ACL in this game. So they were unlucky in that regard. But it does show that the Packers are potentially short of the top level required to win championships. But the good news for them was that it was a bad week for the Detroit Lions as well. The Lions have lost 2 of their last 3 and did not look great in the one they did win against the Bucks. And as a result of their recent dip in form, find themselves in the midst of both divisional and wildcard races. They will need to play better and certainly get a win in Washington next week, which is an opportunity for them to get back on track to present themselves going to Philadelphia in week 11, looking through the postseason window from the outside. And just about the first time I've said this, I think a bad week for the Indianapolis Colts. The week 9 loss to the Steelers may be a mid-season wake-up call for the Colts, but it does have to be said that even though this was about as bad as it could be for them offensively, they still only lost by 7 to an inspired Steelers team on defense. I know they were 17 points down in the fourth quarter before a late touchdown and field goal, but it does show that even their worst is not that bad. So a bad week as they conceded the advantage they had in the race for top seed in the AFC, but they are still in a position they would have loved to be in if offered it pre-season. Now they need to get back on track in week 10 at home to the Falcons before they go on their bye. And I'll quickly wrap through the irrelevant weeks. New York Giants, another promising showing in defeat by the Giants' pass offense led by Jackson Dart, and their pass rush was decent too, but it ended in another loss. And perversely, that may be good news for the Giants in terms of where they pick in the 2026 draft. Las Vegas Raiders, Brock Bowers, Aston Johnson, and Max Crosby give them star power to build on for next season after a narrow overtime loss to the Jags as they failed to convert what would have been a game-winning 2-point conversion. And that was just a pretty poor blow by Geno Smith. He's having by far a great season. How much have they paid him? Anyway, said that before. New Orleans Saints, demolished by the Rams' potent offense and an indifferent first start from Tyler Shugg. This team seems to be heading in the wrong direction right now. And they need to show some signs of hope for next season, but it's not developing that way right now. Miami Dolphins, earlier as apprentices, the Dolphins managed just 6 points against the Ravens, then fall away badly in the second half. Another team like the Saints just seem to be disintegrating. Tennessee Titans, not even a fantastic kick return touchdown and a gift of a pick 6 could help the Titans get a win in week 9. The Titans' biggest issue now is what to do pre the trade deadline in terms of which assets they sell. And the Cleveland Browns and New York Jets, both on bye this week, meant that Browns and Jets fans got a week without having to suffer another loss as they sat and watched some of the other bad teams in the NFL suffer this week. So that wraps up good week, bad week for week 9. Got my team power rankings, MVP and offensive rookie of the year update to follow soon. So stay tuned for that. See you soon.